Welcome to the Our Vibes podcast. We are four Latinas just vibing,
talking about things that matter to us both, sharing our experience, our insights, and our vibes.
I'm Caroline.
I'm Vanessa.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Mufford.
Welcome to a very special episode, our very first sponsored episode.
Woo! Gee, I wonder who.
I think it's Tadin Tea.
I wonder.
One of our favorite brands, actually.
Yes.
We're so excited to have this episode be sponsored by Tadin. We're talking about a very special topic today, very special to this month as well. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and if you've been following us for a while, you know that this is a cause and topic very near and dear to our hearts. So we're excited to dive in to just like mental health awareness, being better for yourself in general. And we have a lot to talk about. Let's dive in.
So first question for everyone today is, can you remember what was the first time you were aware of mental health? Whether it was something that was mentioned or that you started to realize it about yourself?
Honestly, I feel like, and you guys can speak on your experiences, but our culture doesn't really talk about mental health a lot. So I feel like I didn't know the term, and that people, I feel like you see on TV that people go to therapy, but then they associate that with being crazy. So I just always assumed that, especially with our parents kind of chattering like, oh no, esos son para los locos. So then I was like, oh, okay. And then as we got older, and I think I got into college, and people really started talking about mental health and how they watched out for themselves and took care of themselves, that's when I realized like, oh, like this is great. Like why did we never talk about this as a kid? Like, I wish I got therapy when I was a kid.
Seriously.
So yeah, I feel like I didn't know about it until I got much older. And I think with the pandemic, that really like escalated it for me, and people started sharing more knowledge, and I started learning more about it. And I feel like that's how I became more familiar with mental health, at least for me. What about you guys?
For me, it was a little earlier, thankfully, but it wasn't talked about as much, like mental health. But yeah, we didn't know like the components of mental health, like what it actually meant and what it actually meant to do, like to better your mental health. I learned about it in, I think it was around middle school, and that's when you're going through like puberty and like your brains are changing. So everyone was like, you know, your brain's changing, but like you can take care of it, like massage it, mental health awareness thing. But like I didn't know what it meant. I was like, oh, mental health, it's a thing. And then I said I got older, I think college, because everyone was talking about it, because we were all going through such a like weird time that's like, oh, I'm really tired. Why? It's with my mental health. And that's when like it started to become, I don't want to say normal, but like a regular thing.
Yeah.
I feel like in our culture, a lot of us are raised to constantly think about image and perception, how you're perceived and how other people see you, whether it's in your own family or your neighbors, lo que sea. And I've always had a lot of feelings since I was a little girl, like a lot of overwhelming feelings about all aspects of my life. And I was kind of taught to hide it. Like, don't share your feelings, just keep it to yourself. And I remember in high school, I started to like, you know, there'd always be like one or two kids that would like take an hour out of class and go to another classroom and talk to a counselor. And I never knew what that was about. I just like knew that those kids had issues, quote unquote issues. And I once started like talking to one of them, and I realized like they were getting counseling and like working through feelings. And I was like, oh, that's like a process. That's like a thing that you actually do. And that kind of like brought down a curtain for me and kind of exposed me for the first time of like, there's actually people that specialize in this to like help you. And yeah, very much like when college happened, I started getting really stressed out about applications, again with image. Like there's so much pressure to you for like us coming from our culture to go to a good school, be a successful person, to be better than the previous generation. And so that and my childhood feelings all like came into one, and that was the first time that I was like, I need to find therapy. I need to find this counselor that these other kids are going to.
Sign me up.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you brought up the counselors, because it's like, oh, like I'm not supposed to like acknowledge it. The counselors are supposed to acknowledge it. So I never knew it's like, oh, I can speak up so then I can get a counselor. Yeah.
What about you, Muffet?
I'm like, two things. One, 100% agree with the Caroline. I've always felt very strongly in general since I was a kid, and it actually comes to part of my anxiety and stuff that I've been diagnosed with. I just didn't know it was a thing. But also, Vanessa said the massage thing. I can just imagine someone like opening up like a zipper here.
Because when we're kids, it's like mental health. What does that mean? Oh, massaging the brain.
No, I literally see a head like going like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say I was kind of aware maybe like around 6 or like 7 years old, but because my brother was diagnosed with ADHD, but it wasn't something that I was like taking for me. Like I was always talking like to the school counselor just because I was very shy and I was very anxious. So it was easier for me to make friends with grown-ups, and I would spend my recess and over there or reading like at the library, but not so much with kids my age because I didn't feel comfortable. But it never occurred to me that there was something that I was having trouble with until the pandemic, like Jen was saying, because it came to a point because I was working, I was an essential worker. So it came to the point where I was like, okay, I'm having like a mental breakdown 3 or 4 times a week. It's getting inconvenient. And, this can't be normal. And reached out to a couple of therapists and all that stuff. And yep, it's not normal. It's called anxiety.
And speaking about therapy, when did you guys go for the first time?
I went in high school. Another friend, she was going through like her mental health wasn't doing great. So a counselor talked to her. She gave her the resources. And then I was like, let me take a look at that too. So I reached out to a counselor as well. So it's like, you don't know where to start, but thankfully like people at school were able to help me.
That's awesome. I wish I would have gone in high school.
I know.
I wonder how many problems could have been solved there.
No, seriously.
Who
And
wants to beat me up? Like, what do I do?
Seriously,
I don't think therapists help with that.
No, but I mean, at least it's good that the schools were like paying attention and providing that services, because I've always struggled with anxiety, and the more stressed I am, I have tics. And the school nurse and the school's therapist realized it, and they just gave me like a anxiolytic. So when I got home, I was gonna take a shower, and it just knocked me out. I was like knocked out cold on the floor of the bathroom. My dad had to break in the door because I wasn't responding, and it had been a couple hours.
Wait, your counselor gave you medication?
Yeah.
This
And
is
your
in a
parents
different
didn't
country.
No, because that's the thing.
Disclaimer.
Like, drink this, it's gonna be
Disclaimer,
fine.
different country.
Disclaimer, this is a different country.
Yeah, I'm Ecuadorian, so this happened. Like,
Holy, I was
Yeah,
like, I
and
feel
they
like
were
that
like-
couldn't slide here.
and I was like, what's this? So there's like, drink it, it's gonna be fine. Because like the more stressed I am, like my face twitches. They're like, it's gonna be fine. I go home. I was gonna take a shower. I didn't make it into the shower. I knocked out cold on the floor of the bathroom.
That's so scary.
I know, and it had been like 7 p.m. I got home from school like at 4. So my dad was like, "Why are you not answering?" My brother goes like peeks under the door, and he sees me like on the floor. My dad was like broke into
God,
the.
your poor dad. That's traumatizing.
No, and since then, like the school was not allowed to give me any medication without disclosing it. That's something my parents before.
Not you becoming a president in law.
And I was like, ma'am, I have cramps. Can you just please give me some ibuprofen? Nope, we have to call your parents off.
Wow, yeah, that's super dangerous, especially because they're not your doctor. They don't know what
Yeah.
type of condition
And
you
no,
could
like
have.
I could have been allergic to it. Something could have happened.
That's
So
actually
was it
wild.
a counselor first that came up to you to give you help, or did you seek it out?
No, I didn't. It was the school nurse happened to drive by our class to do something, and they realized my eye was twitching, and they're like, "Oh, come over, I'll give you something for it." I was like, "Da da 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 da." There you go. I was like, so yeah.
It stopped twitching all right. I closed my eyes.
I might have been twitching on the bathroom floor, and I can't remember it. But
God, that's
the
wild.
teacher was the plug the whole time.
I bet.
I'm a pusher.
But no, like therapy, like a counselor, like I know because you're
actual
in,
therapy,
yeah.
It didn't happen until 2020 and the pandemic.
And what was that like?
Very scary. Mainly because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, yeah. And like I started talking about it, and they were like, you know, that's not usual. Like people don't usually have like 1,000-mile thoughts running in your head, and you know, like feeling like you're gonna have a heart attack every time you get stressed. I was like,
Good to know.
yeah, like, and it was just so stressful. Like I remember, like I was working in the pharmacy at that point, and all of a sudden, like my chest and my arm went numb, and it was from a panic attack. I was like, I think I'm gonna have a heart attack. We had like the blood pressure machine and everything, but everything was normal.
A lot of people experience panic attacks for the first time in 2020. I had my first panic attack in 2020, and I thought I was gonna die that night.
It's so scary.
Yeah, they ended up calling the ambulance just for like me to go to the hospital and them to tell me that I was fine. And they're like, "You're taking up a bed for a COVID patient. Like you're fine." They ran tests on me, and I was like, "Then why did I pass out? Why did all this happen to me?" And then they're like, "There's this thing called a panic attack," and I was like, "The fact that it can be so physical is terrifying.
Yeah.
When was the first time you went to therapy?
The first time I went to therapy was actually in high school, and I like had been reading books like "Pricked to Being a Wallflower," and like there's another.
I
one.
love that book growing up.
There's another one about this kid in New York that like goes to a facility.
The Catcher in the Rye?
I was gonna say Catcher.
No, they turned it
Percy
into
Jackson
a movie.
and
It's
the
a modern
Olympians?
book. It's a modern book.
Modern
I
book.
forgot what it's called.
The Tale of Despero. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
We'll insert the book when she remembers.
yeah.
This book.
This book.
But those books actually made me scared of like I was like I don't want to go to a facility because they always make it like the main character always feels like they don't belong because they're not as extreme as the other cases, and then they realize that they're fine. And so like part of it I was like, oh, other people also have mental health issues like me, or like are experiencing the same things as me, but I'm also scared because I'm not that extreme. And so
Yeah.
like it was just like back and forth. But eventually I decided to seek it out. And the first lady, it was so wild. Have you guys seen I think it's called not the Wonder Days, Happy Days? Fonzie.
Yeah.
Fonzie in a wig was my therapist. It was wild.
I would be so like, I trust you.
Well, I was just like nervous. She like couldn't relate to this like little Mexican teenager at all, and like it was all white rooms with posters that say "I believe" and like stuff like it just felt very cliche. And
It's
so
giving.
I went like a few times.
It's giving
and-
live, love, love.
I went like 3 times, and I was like, oh, I don't feel like really comfortable like being vulnerable about my actual feelings. And so I was like, oh, I'm better. And then I stopped and I didn't go for a few years. But that was my first experience. It was very like, am I supposed to be here? Is this
Was your
wrong?
first panic attack in high school, or was it later?
No, I was already graduated college when I had my panic attack.
You were saying that like your therapist was like a white lady and you didn't feel like comfortable talking about. I think it's like you go to therapy and you're like, oh, it's someone that I don't relate to, and like you tell them your problems and they're like, oh, just take it step by step, and it's like, thanks for not helping me.
You're like, well, okay, but what step?
Yeah.
Which
And
leg
then
first?
I think as I got older and then I was able to look for my own therapist, like you find people of color and they're like able to not relate to you, but they're able to at least understand. And like I think like, oh yeah, my first time when I went to therapy, yeah, I can throw that out the window because like the first time going to therapy now, I feel so accepted and they understand me and they're able to talk me through it.
It took a while for me to learn that you can find different therapists. Like I thought once you get one, like you're stuck with them.
It's like a doctor.
And then you can advocate for yourself if you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, when I decided to go back to therapy 2 years later, and that next therapist was my absolute favorite. She was a child of immigrants. She was an Asian woman, just finished like getting her license and like becoming a doctor. And she like, I also didn't think I would relate to her at first, but then she ended up like completely understanding my pressure, my anxieties, my familial connections, and it was really empowering to speak to her.
We love a culturally informed therapist.
Seriously, my 2 therapists have been Latina. The first time I got introduced to it, I was in this program called Co-op, and they offered therapy as part of their program, which I thought it was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And I think part of it was because a lot of the program was like of POC, and they know that mental health is like a taboo almost within our cultures. So they had it as like they offered it and it was free, and so I was like, oh, I've always wanted to go to therapy and it's free, like why not? I know sometimes it could be a costly thing. So I did it, and she was Latina, and that was really awesome to see, and she was really helpful. I was only able to get it during my time at Co-op, but it was great. It was nice. And then once I got older, I went and I did another Latina, and she's been wonderful so far.
More Latinas in counseling.
And therapy.
Did you
And everywhere in general.
did you guys tell your family right away that you were going to therapy? Like, how did they take it? No,
I didn't tell my mom no for a while. And she actually found out because she happened to wake up early that day, and I was about to have a therapy session. So she came in and I was like, Mom, I need some privacy. I have something on. And she's like, oh, do you have a class? I was like, no, not quite. She's like, I have an appointment. She's like, appointment for what? I'm like, an appointment. And then she was like, for what? I'm like, therapy. She's like, what? Therapy. Like, therapy for what?
Why didn't you want to tell her?
Because, like Jen was saying, it's a very taboo topic in general. My dad, especially early on, he didn't believe in psychology. I'm like, not a religion, but whatever. But And my mom was always the one helping out my brother because he had ADHD and it weighed on him heavily through his time in school. But because they were all very busy with him and getting him the help that he needed at the time, I always felt like, well, I'm the oldest child. I'm not supposed to be giving them any trouble or anything to worry about. So I was always very independent. I will handle it myself. I'm not going to give them anything additional, like to add to their mental load. So I didn't want them to worry and I didn't want them to feel concerned. So I was very scared of how they were going to react, how they were going to take it, if they were going to panic. If
And
they were
did
gonna,
she?
Yeah. She still does. I cope with my mental health issues with dark humor, and it freaks her out to this day.
Yeah, you don't realize like, oh, like I'm crazy, and, which you're not. But then like your parents are like, are you crazy? Like, should we be concerned?
No, I'll make jokes, and sometimes she's like, can you please stop saying that? I was like, ma'am, the day I stop joking about it is the day you should be concerned. If I can't joke about it, that's when it's getting serious.
Yay for dark humor.
Yay!
It's been keeping us alive since day one.
Coping mechanism.
Coping mechanism. Yeah, I'm heavy on the dark humor.
My parents were kind of supportive, but also not. Like, one thing my parents will 100% always be is they love me so intensely and so much that they like want to make sure I'm safe. And my mental health got so bad that they were worried for my health and my safety. And that's why like they were like, yeah, like, you know what, just do it. Like, find a therapist. And that was my first time. But at the same time, they were still very like, what if you get like a diagnosis? What if you can't get a job because of that? Like, so I was going into it like kind of empowered, but also kind of scared of like, oh, okay, I better not get.
I can't be as open as I should
because I don't want a diagnosis. Yeah. And then I ended up just, they're like, we diagnosed you with anxiety and depression. I was like, oh no, not anxiety and depression.
And then you get anxious about anxiety
and then I got my first job and nobody asked me if I had anxiety and depression.
Yeah, like it's not asked. Like they're not gonna find out unless you're openly like telling people about it, and that's your choice.
But like people are saying that, and it deters you from doing it. Like the lack of education
Oh,
has
no,
stopped
100%.
people from seeking therapy.
Oh no, 100%. And they're like, well, even if you got a nice, why are you sucking it up for like a label? It's up to you. I'm like, no, it's not up to me. It's my brain. It's not working.
It's like it's not up to me. Like I can try to help myself, but like sometimes it's not.
They're like, just think better thoughts. You don't think I've tried that? Like I wouldn't be seeking therapy if I could do that.
But some like the diagnosis can be something so scary, but also at the same time so liberating. Yeah. Because it's like there's nothing wrong with me. It's just this, and now I know what it is and how I can treat it. Because I got the triple one.
It's like being diagnosed with acid reflux. Like you just gotta work.
Or asthma. Just they give you an inhaler and you're good.
No, yeah, it's the relief. It's like, oh, I can Google depression and articles can come out and I can educate myself.
And I can get resources and get help if I need it.
Yeah. I didn't tell my parents. Thankfully, like everyone was still in high school. I don't want to say I was popular. But like people knew me. Like the counselors, the teachers, like everybody knew me. So when I went up to them being like, hey, like, can I seek a counselor? And then I told them like, I don't want my parents to know just because like I want to deal this with myself. And they were very understanding because they're like, we know that you're responsible. We know what you're doing. If it reaches to a point where we have to tell your parents, we will, but like we're gonna trust you. And I'm like, oh, thank God. So it's like nice. It's so nice when like there's adults around you,
when adults that trust you and like give you the opportunity to figure it out yourself. Because sometimes, and I'm like, thankfully, I don't know, it hasn't been our experience, but there are families who unfortunately haven't been a safe space, and that kind of thing could get them in trouble.
I was really fortunate. For me, my second time, my mom actually seeked the therapist out for me. I was going through something, and I think they were worried about me, so she's like, oh, I know someone, and she connected me with the therapist, and I'm actually really, really glad that she did, because the therapist helped me a lot.
That's great.
But it was just so interesting to see, like, I guess the 360 with my parents. Now they're super open to therapy. My mom actually seeked therapy too after my grandpa passed away, which is like super huge of her, and I was really proud. But yeah, just seeing their transition from like everyone's crazy to like we all need therapy and we need to take care of our mental health, and them seeing how important it is. My dad too, he's always checking in on me, like, how are you? How's your day going? How's your week? And I'm very open with my dad. I have a really great relationship with him. So he knows a lot about what's going on in my life, and I'm always super honest with him, and so he's always just checking in like, oh, I'm glad to hear you're having a good day and stuff like that. Love the man to death. And I'm just happy that my parents, both of them, are just very open to the ideal of seeking therapy. I think that's awesome, and I'm so proud of them.
I know, we love supportive parents.
Yeah.
It's been a big change for my parents too, like from my mom being very scared for me at the first, like she still kind of is. But mostly because at this point, like, she's Googled the diagnoses that I have had. And she's like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, fine-ish. Yeah. But to this point, like, she's like, I'll be like, okay, I have therapy. Just please don't bug me. And she'll be like, how did it go? What did Tina said? I'm like, okay, just, just chilling. We're good. It's like, we mentioned next Wednesday. Sometimes I'll tell her. Sometimes I don't, because sometimes it's my private stuff. My dad has been way more open about it too. We were just talking about it yesterday. And he was like, I know you're going through a lot right now because life happening. But he's like, if you look at yourself from who you were in 2016 when we first moved here and how much you have grown in these 8 years, there's nothing that you can do if you don't set your mind to it. So just make sure you're prioritizing yourself and your health. And I was like,
that's great.
We love supportive parents.
I know. It was so nice.
I was going to add on that. It's been beautiful to see that through us, growing so much.
And being open
maturing.
about it.
Yeah. And like, just becoming healthier humans by going to therapy. I feel like our parents have also like seen the potential to like I can also be healthy and like grow through this. And so, yeah, that's why I love talking about therapy too. Cause like, I feel like anybody that hears another person's story, it empowers and like passes on the chain of like, let's all be better humans. Let's all go to therapy.
I know. I feel like a therapy pusher these days. It's like, no, you have to go. It's so great. It's like
Disneyland.
Please go.
Yeah,
Take care of yourself.
And it opens it up to people who may be struggling and they feel scared to be like, okay, if it's getting normalized, it's okay if I need help too, because you're not meant to deal with everything on your own.
And I'm so happy there's been so much education around it, because I think sometimes people kind of ask out-of-pocket questions because they don't know what to expect. And I feel like they think you're going to go into like a room with like pillows and they're going to start questioning you and giving you advice. But therapists actually don't do that. They just ask questions for you to kind of solve your problems. They ask very difficult questions that you need to self-reflect on, but they're not solving your problems. Like, that's still up to you. And I think people don't know that.
Yeah. The difficulty really depends on you. And whether or not you want to look at yourself.
Yeah. I know. Sometimes they ask questions and you're like, really, lady, on a Tuesday? We're
7 a.m.
And then you got to cop on a Zoom for work after.
You're like, dang, she has me all messed up with that question. Is she right, though?
I used to have my therapy sessions on my lunch break. So I'd be like,
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Anyway, like 7, we ride at dawn.
and I'm like, let me put my bangs in front of my face so people can see it. I'm like typing away.
Although our parents weren't as big in like therapy and all that, what are some self-care practices that they have like passed down to you?
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes through stuff. I'm sure they had to have had stuff to like regulate their emotions somehow. Walk away.
Take a walk.
Take a walk.
My family has always been pretty close-knit, so it's always been like, like family reunions, and then when everyone leaves, like after the family lunch, they're like, quiero un tecito, y empiezan a chismear, a contar todas sus cosas.
Chismear is therapy.
It really is.
It really is. Yeah, I think like we've kind of as a culture labeled like chisme as a toxic thing, as a bad thing, but talking is healing. Like that's exactly
and
what
it's
it is.
It's a bonding time with your family and friends. Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be bad chisme. Like, I feel like the word has a negative connotation where people's like, oh, they're just like saying really nasty rumors or something. But sometimes you could be like, oh, I'm really proud of X, like they succeeded this, and that's still chisme. Like the other person might not have known about the accomplishments, but you're right, it's always a negative thing. I think for me, similar to you, tea, and just food in general, I think has been something that's very comforting. I feel like after I had a
fruit after.
Yes. After I had like a bad day or something, I feel like my dad always tried to give me like some of my favorite foods. Like Thai food is like my favorite food of all time. So he'd be like, vamos a comer Thai food. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, that sounds great. Or it's like, oh, ¿quieres que te haga un tecito? Because we like to eat popcorn with like this. Because we like indulge in popcorn with like chile limon.
Yeah.
And then we drink tea right after.
I've never tried that.
That's why chamomile's like my ride or die.
Yeah.
My dad too. I feel like a lot of Latino dads, like they don't share that much about themselves. But like I know when he had a hard day, he'd be like, do you guys want to go get ice cream? And then that's when I know like he had a hard day. And that's all I would know about his hard day. That is like,
Would he like talk to you guys like during the ice cream outing?
Yeah, just like, oh, I saw this on the news the other day. Like, stuff like that. But,
No,
like,
same.
it's
Like,
still bonding.
Yeah, or like my dad's like, you know, like, it's like, vamos a tomarnos un café, vamos a tomarnos un té. Or like we'll go to a coffee shop and just sit down and talk for a bit. Sometimes you just need to get out of the house and just like somewhere else so you can get into
Space
that
has the
headspace
energy.
and just actually talk about things.
My dad, when he's like, it's not that he's having a hard day, but like he's in a good mood. He goes and gets like bun, like cuernitos and like conchas, and then he like heats up the pot with the water, and he's like, what do I want today, coffee or tea? And like we're having to like, it's a community.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I love pan dulce. Me and my dad are
You're
pan
making me
dulce
hungry.
connoisseurs.
You're making me hungry, and they don't even sell my kind of pan dulce here.
Is there a specific tea that you would typically see? Like, is there a go-to?
I feel like it's chamomile. I feel
Yeah,
like that's
Yeah,
always
it's
a
kind of,
go-to.
yerba buena, the yerba buena spearmint. I didn't know it was called that.
Canelita.
I drink
Oh yeah,
Manzanilla.
the manzanilla.
Manzanilla.
manzanilla is chamomile.
Yeah. I just wanted to say it in Spanish, okay?
Fun fact, everybody. Hibiscus is Jamaica. Spearmint, I could be saying that wrong. Is té de yerba buena.
Well, believe it or not,
and then té de manzanilla is chamomile.
Well, believe
You're
it
welcome.
more you
Well, believe it or not, we don't have al menos yo no he visto té de Jamaica en Ecuador, so I haven't tried it
Jennifer
before.
was
I
like-
didn't know what it was.
Jennifer was like, can you say yerba buena?
I had my Dora the Explorer moment, y'all.
I know.
We
Swipe
can't
right
gloss
now,
over that.
swipe right.
It's the passive aggressiveness for me.
No, I barely learned that in the last couple years, and I was shook. Because you just say it in Spanish, you don't say it in English.
Yeah.
Same thing, because para mí todo es menta. Todo es menta. And there's like spearmint, there's peppermint, and all these different mints. And I was like,
No, there's just yerba buena.
there's different mints.
Yeah. And they all kind of set the mood. Like, one is for like, oh, like you just associate it with like, you know, to relax. Another one is like, oh, you associate it to just like feel brighter throughout the day. And
That's green tea for me.
oh,
nothing
green tea. Yeah.
Nothing
Ooh,
like a
green tea, yeah.
Nothing like good green tea with like lemon squeeze for breakfast in the morning because I don't drink coffee.
I like having it after I eat. It just feels good.
Yeah, because you feel like
It's
feel
like refreshing.
airy, freshy.
That reminds me of my tia. Every time we would have lunch at her house, like we finish and I said, Mija, quiero una agüita aromática. And she had a full collection. So she would bring all her teas out and you got to pick and choose which one you wanted.
I have such a hard time staying hydrated. Like, I don't drink water
That's
because of the lack of like flavor. So I'll throw in like a little tea in there to add
little
some
iced
flavor.
tea.
Oh, I love iced tea.
No, you're
Me
totally
too.
right. Because whenever I drink tea, I'm like, wow, Jennifer, you drink water today. Like, what a queen. You're
Technically, you would
winning.
drink
Yeah. And then it goes back to health. Like, you're just healthier. Your skin is better when you drink more. Like,
No, yeah, like sometimes I don't like drinking coffee because it's like it's 6 a.m. and you're just like a caffeine overload. It's like sometimes I want a tea.
My mom's like that actually. This is like their culture. I never noticed until right now that we're speaking about it. But it's like coffee in the morning and at night it's just tea. And I think that's like my stepdad's love language of like, or his way of kind of saying like I love you. He'll be like, oh, ¿quieres tu tecito? And then he'll bring tea for me and my mom, and I'm like, you really are
is so
that
sweet.
setting standards up here. But yeah.
That is
I
so
feel like
sweet.
also Mexican moms have like their designated mug. Like, it's the same one that they use every time.
Like, it's Tadina's mom in general. My mom gets so mad when someone grabs her mug.
Dude, my aunt loves your vibes mugs. Like, she's like, no, it's my mug. And I'm like, I'm trying to use the mug.
No, my mom is, and it's funny because like my mom has one that I specifically got for her, like for Mother's Day, that she always uses, and she would get super mad because my grandma, whenever she comes over, she grabs it, and she's like, and we got my grandma a mug for her, but she still continues to use it. My mom, and she's like,
Dude,
ya me
same.
cogió mi jarro.
My mom, I got her a to-go mug because she likes taking her tea, specifically tea, on the go in the car. And I grabbed her like a little to-go like mug and everything. And she still uses the, what is it? It's like the protein shakers.
I'm
the
dead.
big cups. Just because that's like the amount she wants.
She's like, I'm
You just have to get her one that is the same, same but so
I
it keeps it
guess.
cold or hot.
But it has to be like a girth cup too. It's like my hand has to look like this.
Guess if it's too little, like it's easy to miss where you're putting it in the car, and then you're gonna spill it. And who wants spilled tea? Unless you're spilling tea.
Yeah, I know.
Who wants spilled tea?
There you go. Okay, but what do you guys usually talk about when you're having tea with your family or with your loved ones?
I feel like lately, like I've had a very different relationship with my mom since I've become an adult and moved out. And so I've been having different conversations with her, and I hang a lot with her and my tia and my cousin, who's also older, and like now our tea time, we literally like went to like we had a little tea party last weekend, and like our tea times have become like much more than chisme. Like we're talking about like our relationships, like mother-daughter relationships. It's been like talking about mental health, about anxiety, like what is it having anxiety, like leaving the nest? Oh, this is my anxiety living without you guys for the first time. And like although it's like fun tea time, it's also led to really healing conversations for us. And I feel like, you know, I don't know if it's new or not, but I feel like our generation is kind of evolving what it means to like spill the tea or like have chisme time with our tias and our moms.
I echo the same sentiment. I think I've been having very challenging and difficult conversations with my mom. Whenever we're having like the bonding moments like that, like how you're saying tea time, same. And it's hard. Like in therapy, they'd be like, you have to like speak out for yourself and have boundaries. I'm like, but how do you like bring up that to your parent? Like it's so scary. And I've been like open to doing that, and it's been so great because I understand my mom as a person and like where her mindset was, and I realized like you don't really know unless you ask. And so having those conversations has been great because then she understands my aspect. And I feel like we've always had a very interesting relationship, and going to therapy and having those moments where we get to bond have been really helpful in like strengthening our relationship and our bond. And I'm glad that it's come to that. And I just wish I would have done it sooner and gone to therapy or something.
I find myself a lot with my mom. Like she'll bring up something like Gordo y la Flaca, like, oh, like, did you hear about this thing that ended up happening between Chiquis and Jenny Rivera? Like, imagine that. And then like that's a mother-daughter relationship. So I cling on to that, and I was like, oh, but like, how do you think Chiquis felt in that moment when she like heard this?
I use that too.
Turn into like, or like Alejandra Guzman like has a lot of drama with her daughter too, and it's like
I'm just finding out.
Let's dissect media to strengthen our relationship.
But dude, have y'all like connected chisme to like have conversations?
Oh no, 100%, and it happens a lot now as an adult because, like you were saying, it's a different dynamic than when you're obviously younger because your parents are just like, okay, do what I say. But it gets to a point where you're an adult and they see you as an adult and they start valuing your perspective.
That part.
So they ask for stuff, and it's happened with my mom, and there's like having trouble with people she knows or like some of her friends. She's like, and I don't understand why they're doing this. If this is, I'm like, have you considered maybe setting boundaries? And I explain it to her, and she's like, huh, and she starts valuing your perspective, or something happens. She's like, I want to know your opinion. And it comes to that point where she's like, well, now when I'm like, I understand this and this, I'm like, you know, it's similar to when that thing happened to you. And she understands it better. But it also gives you an opportunity to get to know them before behind the, oh, she's just your mom, but they're also a human being.
The human. When you start to see your mom as a human, have you seen that meme? No?
No.
Okay. There's like there's an SNL skit that like did it, but have you noticed that like your parents start to ask like, oh, what did your therapist actually end up saying about this? Like it makes them curious of like how they can apply it to their life, but they're trying to be like sly about it.
My mom asks every time like I'm done. She's like, so what did you say? Like, did she say anything? I'm like, and I'll mention it. And she's like, oh, okay. And like she starts pointing out stuff that has been going on with the family. And I was like, see, like, ahí está. Por eso tienen que ir a terapia.
Yeah, it's like secondhand therapy.
I know.
It is. And I like to tell, my parents ask me the same things, like, oh, what has she said about this? Or have you communicated this? And I'm like, oh, she said this. And I feel like it was at first it was their way of saying like, so is this person, what is this person like, you know?
Talking about me.
Yeah, not even that. I think they want to see if you're talking about them. Two, they want to see is the other person sane who's giving you advice? And then three, I think they just want to get like knowledgeable on what's going on. And then when I kind of give them brief recaps, they're like, yeah, that sounds wise. And then I feel like they self-reflect, and you can see that their like brain is like,
you see the gears are
moving. They're like, the math is mathing. So I like it. I personally like it. I like sharing with my parents what I learned because it's like, you know, when you learn something and you're experiencing it for the first time, you almost want to grab their hand and be like, come along with me on this journey. Whether they be traveling, trying something new, like you just want them to know too. Because I do feel like they got robbed significantly from their childhood to be able to grow up. At least my parents like came from Mexico and they left everything, and I just can't imagine leaving everything that you love and to start over. And I think we know that, but we sometimes forget it because we get stuck in our everyday life. So I always try to
issues that we have, that we don't realize the privilege and the sacrifices they have made for us.
100%.
Definitely interest from like our parents' generation to like learn something new. I feel like I always catch my mom and my tias talking about like, oh, vi este TikTok de yoga, or has oído de tai chi, feng shui.
El keto diet.
I took them to a garden the other day. They like disappeared from me and my cousin, and we found them hugging trees because feng shui said that the trees give you like renewed energy.
We love that. I've gotten that from my dad. Sometimes when you start, she's like, just go. She's like, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. before the sun is out and go without your shoes and hug a tree and they charge.
He said that, but doesn't believe in therapy.
I'm dead. I'm dead. Yes. And I'm like,
you know, they have their own ways of like trying.
I feel like they see it more of like the diagnosis and like you're gonna get stuck in it and you're never gonna like graduate from therapy, and that's what they're concerned about. So I'm like, I get you're concerned, but it's helping me and I see growth. So as long as I'm happy with it, I will continue going.
It is a beautiful thing to see the worlds merge. I went to Northgate a couple days ago, and it was like an older lady, right? And we were just having a conversation, chatting it up in Spanish, and she was like,
in an aisle?
No, she was the cash register, right? Yeah, and we were just chatting in Spanish, and then she's like, yeah, you know, it's been tough. I started the keto diet, but she's like, el keto diet. And I was like, dang, keto man over here. I was like, wow.
Dude, my mom was on keto and she was trying to get from me. I'm like,
Yeah, but it's just so amazing to see. Like, I feel like that's something you see like with the younger generation, and to see them like being educated on keto and entering there. I'm like, damn, keto entered the chat on this side. Like, wild.
It's TikTok for them. Like my mom was like, me dice, oye, el otro día vi en TikTok, estoy aquí, estaba probando para limpiar, pero no funciona. Y yo, ¿tú para qué le crees a TikTok?
No, honestly, like they think like TikTok is for the youth, but my dad be on TikTok. Like, did you see what happened here? Did you see this? And I'm like, go TikTok.
My mom was sending me reels and TikToks all day.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of them are like so very Catholic, but like I hear them talking about like Buddhism and like Buddhist ideas of like the universe and accepting what is, and I'm like, dang, and like, are you Catholic or Buddhist? What is happening?
They're gonna be like, we should have gotten them on TikTok sooner.
These darn kids, the new wave.
I know.
So, knowing what you know now, what is something you would like the next generation to know of Latinas?
I think that there's hope. Like, I feel very hopeful now. Like, we all have these same experiences with our parents of like teaching them. They're learning through us, willing to try new things. I think there's hope for our generation, and there's hope for our parents' generation as well to talk about things and kind of remove the stigma and be open to healing together.
And I think like as parents are also like healing, they also help their parents as well and people around their inner circle. It just gives them more tools to deal with things as they have.
I think just like talk. Like, I think we're so scared to talk to our parents because they're like, oh, they're not going to understand, blah, blah, blah. But like, no, talk to your parents, and maybe they won't understand, but just like talk it through them, and you'll have healing conversations.
Sit down, have a cup of tea.
Exactly.
Have a cup of Tadin.
Lure them in. We were like, oh, you want to drink some tea? And then like trap them. What about you, Jennifer?
I think I would just like them to know that it's okay to seek out therapy. I know it could be scary, but give it a try. You never know unless you try. And then, just have those difficult conversations with your parents. I think it could be really healing no matter what age you are. I'm already entering my 30s. I'm already in my 30s, actually. Wait, I'm in my 30s. I'm like, how old am I?
Stage 1, denial.
Stage 1, denial. And I'm barely having these conversations with my family members, and it's so healing, and I just wish I did it sooner. So if I had any advice, seek out therapy. It's awesome. And also, even if you don't go to therapy, like, don't be afraid to continue to do things that make you feel great. You know your body best and your mind, and don't be afraid to tap into stuff that makes you happy. Of course, that they're like legal and healthy for you.
Not just that, but also like know that it's okay to struggle. Just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, that you're failing at something. It's human to struggle. Sometimes life's gonna life, and if you need the help, don't be scared of looking for it, because just life is easier when you have a good network of support.
I like that you brought up fail, because with like Latinas, we're so entrapped in this idea of being like, I have to be perfect, like my parents are expecting so much of me. Accept failure, and like walking it a little bit, being like, yeah, this is what it's like to fail.
And it's scary.
It's
though.
scary, yeah,
Like,
because then you get so trapped in your head, and then it's like, oh, I have anxiety now.
And I always grew up with the si vas a hacer algo, hazlo bien. Si no lo vas a hacer bien, ni lo intentes. So I'm like, I need to excel. I need to be perfect, and it's just not realistic.
But I feel like nobody talks about that moment after you failed and you come back. It's the most empowering thing in the planet. And I feel like you almost had like a rebirth, and you shed whoever or the expectations you had for yourself and who you are as a person. And now you're this new version of yourself. And I promise you, it's the most empowering thing. If it ever happens to you, like, you're going to feel like that beat.
Life is better when you just vibe.
I like that.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe, like.
Share with your friends, share with your loved ones, share with your parents. A reminder to go to therapy. And feel free to drop it in the comments, your experience. We'd love to hear from you.
Also, we'd love to thank Tadin for sponsoring this episode. We've been huge fans since we were all kids, as you guys all heard. Like, I wish I was saying that we were just like making this up, but we're really not. We really did grow up with all of these products. Yeah, we still drink these products till this day. So this is a very exciting opportunity for us, and we're just so grateful, Tadin, for sponsoring this episode.
Bye.
Bye, guys.